All right, you ignorant pigs, listen up. Put down your crack pipes and your beer bongs. It's time for HD's Night at the Movies. This night's offering from Beyond the Pit is Dog Soldiers, 2002, starring Kevin Mckidd, Sean Petraud, Darrin Morfitt, directed by Neil Marshall and written by Neil Marshall. Let's check it out.
Cheers, mate. Sarge.
So what happens when you combine Aliens, Zulu, Predator, Jaws? You get Dog Soldiers. Dog Soldiers is quite possibly one of the best horror movies filmed in 2002. And 2002 was one heck of a year for horror movies. Not only did you get Eight-Legged Freaks, you got Queen of the Damned, you got Blade, you also had Resident Evil, the first one, and you had Bubba Hotep. So placing this movie in the top 5 is pretty easy, you know, but how does it stack up to Bubba Hotep? How does it stack up to Resident Evil? Resident Evil was good, but Paul W.S. Anderson sucks Donkey Kong dong. So I've got to give the number 3 spot immediately to Dog Soldiers, you know, and I'm just going to have to kick Resident Evil off of the top 5 list just on the basis that Paul W.S. Anderson is out there sucking some serious Donkey Kong dong. Anyway, you know, Dog Soldiers is one of those films that really just flew under the radar, and it was a straight-to-DVD release. It only appeared in theaters in the UK, and it was made for a partly sum of 2.3 million British pounds. Not to mention, it was filmed in Luxembourg when the movie actually took place in Scotland. So the first scene, you have Private Cooper, who you get to meet immediately doing a Special Forces selection training exercise. He fails on the premise that he didn't want to murder a dog in cold blood. Next scene, you got a group of soldiers coming out of a helicopter, very similar to Predator, and they're on a secret mission / training exercise, and all these British people can talk about is bam and bollocks. I'm missing the footy for a stupid exercise. Fool-on footy war. It's England versus Germany. This isn't fair, Sergeant Harry. And of course, you know, the sergeant's like, shut up. I need you to soldier right now. In proper native Cockney wit. And then we get to meet our cast of soldiers. The mission takes place just after a young couple had been slaughtered by werewolves in the middle of the forest. And what is it with young couples or people backpacking in the woods encountering werewolves? If you ever watched the movie Bad Moon, that's how that movie starts out. Young couple out in the woods, you know, on a excursion, run afoul of werewolves, you know, and then American Werewolf in London. If you're backpacking in a Eurotrash country, you will run into werewolves. So it's only natural that this is how that movie starts out, you know. And Then they make reference while they're resting to the Beast of Bodmin Moor. Now, the Beast of Bodmin Moor is an old Cornwall tale about a spectral cat that will take your soul out onto the moor and devour your body. Now, what I don't get is that Cornwall is 8 hours away from Glasgow, and if this Beast of Bodmin Moor is a proper Brit, it's too lazy to travel north for 8 hours like the rest of the hobbits from Lower Uncton. So what is it doing in Scotland? I haven't the faintest. Now, one of the things I really enjoy about this movie is the modern Tommy. I just really dig their trench talk with one another. And, you really get to know your soldiers in the first 20 minutes of the movie. And I'm going to say it's probably my favorite part of the movie is just getting to know your soldiers. You got Joe, the strong guy, Private Spoon, and just getting to know these guys and, knowing you got some nods to the Tommies that might have died in the trenches of France during World War I, or some of their grandfathers at this time frame who would have served at Dunkirk in World War II. And you see a lot of that kind of history there. And during the night when they pitch camp and everything and they're resting again after a day's march, they're telling stories around the campfire. Now, in Jaws, Quint gives a speech about the USS Indianapolis. And in this movie, Sean Petraw, or Sergeant Ryan, gives a vivid story about how one of his mates died in Kuwait on a mop-up exercise. And then how do they interrupt this? They drop a cow onto the campfire, in much the same way you see a wild pig come into the camp where the men are basically trying to get some sleep in the night during the movie Predator, about midway through after Blaine got killed. So they decide to track the path of the cow because they noticed it didn't die of natural causes. It had teeth marks through it, and they already had all this talk about the Beast of Bodmin Moor. So they find their way to the camp of the Special Forces that was watching them on the opposite side of the glen where they were hiking around. And this is where they find Captain Ryan, Special Forces, Neil Cunningham's character. And then when they're trying to patch up Captain Ryan, get a signal on the radio, they notice on their radio there's a bug. And they said, "Oh no, Bohum bollocks, it's a Kobayashi Maru test. They set us up, Sarge." And then 27 minutes into the film, you got the howling of werewolves. And from that moment on, it's action, 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 all guns blazing. Sergeant Harry's barking orders. You get to learn the role of each soldier inside of the squad. You got Private Spoon. He's the point man. He's the tough fighter. You got Private Joe. He's the strong guy, and he's the one who's got his shotgun in the one hand, and he's carrying Sergeant Ryan on the other hand. And then you have everybody else. Of course, Private Cooper, second in command, next to Sergeant Harry. And as they're running away from the werewolves, shooting at the werewolves, they run into a woman in the middle of the forest who's driving a Land Rover, naturally. And this is kind of like where the movie kind of gives a nod to the scene in Aliens where Ripley drives the APC down into the mouth of the hive and pulls out Hicks, Vasquez, and Private Hudson. And then she takes them to a farmhouse where the rest of the movie will ultimately unfold. Now, Private Spoon, he makes reference to this being a lot like Rock's Drift, where you had about 100 British soldiers, the Queen's Light Infantry squaring off about 4,000 Zulus. And this is also where the movie, again, is a lot like Aliens and Zulu, because every time the werewolves come on, it's going to deplete the ammunition supply. So the first attack, what happens? The werewolves cut the power. What do you mean they cut the power? They're animals, man. And one thing this movie does very, very well is that it makes uses of other films, nodding to them but not plagiarizing them, doing their own thing. And you don't really see that kind of filmmaking anymore. And then after the first attack, you find out that Megan and Captain Ryan know one another because of Captain Ryan's prior visit when they were looking for these things the first time. And so, The werewolves come on again, and they're going to try to make a break for it. They know that there's an old parked car out in the garage or the barn or wood cellar or whatever. So they go out there, they get the car after a distracting tactic. They bring the car to the front door. There's a werewolf in the car. And again, that's a lot like Aliens when they call Pharaoh for dust off. Pharaoh comes up. All of a sudden, there's an alien inside of the dropship. You see a bunch of blood splatter on the windshield of the car, a bunch of blood splatter in the cockpit of the dropship, and then there's a mild explosion. There's petrol leaking everywhere, and they can't get away. Very similar to Aliens in that regard, And then just after that, they're kind of at their lowest moment. Then they find out from Captain Ryan that they were assets. They were the bait of Captain Ryan's Special Forces team in order to try to capture one of these. They learn from Captain Ryan, who turns into Carter Burke and Dylan from Predator and Aliens, all rolled into one. They learn that they were assets, and then he turns into a werewolf, and they got to deal with that. And then the werewolves come on again because Megan betrays the boys to the werewolves. During the last stand, Spoon is separated from Private Cooper and Sergeant Harry. He makes his last stand in the kitchen, and what a stand that is. That's how you don't go out like a bitch. He goes down swinging, like just everything he's got at the werewolves. Daring is the epitaph of the fighting man. And then you have Private Cooper and Sergeant Harry, and the movie kind of turns into Zulu again. When the fire breaks out, you have men pitching knives and bayonets into the mud brick walls to claw their way through the walls to get one more room away from the werewolves as this tension just keeps mounting and mounting. And then Sergeant Harry knows he's going to turn into a werewolf. And he decides to get into the kitchen with Cooper. Cooper goes down into the basement. They blow the house. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to leave you on that cliffhanger because I don't want to spoil the entire movie for you. But what a movie it is. So let's get into those Slayer Pit totals. We have 2 ugly British women. Definitely not Hammer horror quality. 13 dead bodies, 1 dead cow, 1 dead dog, gratuitous Cockney football talk, 1 tree branch through a torso, machine guns, short controlled bests, werewolf hand stabbing, werewolf hand bashing with a hammer, 1 case of accidental human stew, looks like pork, boiling water to a werewolf face, frying pan foo, heads roll, arms roll. What would it be like if a dog chewed on your intestines? Multiple wolf punches and claws, neck snapping, burning log to the chest, wacky glue surgery, sword play, lopping off werewolf whims with said sword. And then you have 2 punches to the face, werewolf boxing, projectile vomit onto a British officer, grenades, explosion, Molotov cocktail, tons of fire. Hairspray, flamethrower, camera flash foo, kick to the face of a werewolf, 1 case of shooting a bitch to the eye, Sean Connery style, bodies on hooks being turned into human stew by a Celtic family, silver letter opener to the chest, another shot through the head, gratuitous Max the dog. Slayer Pit Awards go to Sean Petraw for Best Actor. If Little Red Riding Hood should show up with a bazooka and a bad attitude, I expect you to chin the bitch. And then Darrin Morfitt, I hope I give you the shits, you fucking wimp. Best Director going out to Neil Marshall for making one heck of a movie that never, ever gets old, no matter how many times you watch it. And then you got to give the special effects shout out to Bob Keane. Bob Keane did the special effects for Life Force, Event Horizon, and Hellraiser. The list goes on with that guy. He's a huge special effects guy, So chances are, if you're a fan of horror movies or science fiction, you've probably watched one or two movies that have included Bob Keane's work. Anyway, HD gives this movie 4 Four Skulls. Check it out for the month of Halloween. You will not be disappointed. This is definitely one that should be in your video library full time. Full time. This is not negotiable. Anyway, as you know, if you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me on Instagram. You can DM me there. If you want to leave a comment, I will always answer your comments. If you want to help out the channel, go over to the link in the description, Soy Free Warhammer, and subscribe to me on Rumble. Anyway, as you know, YouTube has many features you can use to interact with me. You can like the video, dislike the video, comment, or subscribe. But until I see you again, keep painting, keep watching horror movies in the month of Halloween, and we'll see you in the next one.
More of an expert at exposing the moon. Get out of here! Let's go! See if you find the one crater.